What if you could save for education, watch that money grow completely tax-free, and then, well, if there's money left over, roll it straight into a retirement account for the beneficiary without paying a dime in penalties?
Yeah, that combination. Control, tax-free growth, and a retirement safety valve. It used to sound like, well, fantasy. But it's the modern promise of the Section 529 Qualified Tuition Program.
Okay, let's unpack this. This deep dive is all about the 529 plan. And the sources we looked at show it's really undergone an evolution.
Absolutely.
It's not just a college savings tool anymore. It's becoming this powerful, maybe a bit complex, lifetime education and wealth transfer vehicle.
It really is.
So our mission today is to kind of give you a clear map, help you navigate the difference between these expanding federal benefits and, frankly, the often tricky, sometimes confusing state tax rules that really dictate how you actually benefit.
Right. And to understand the power, we really have to start with the core engine. A 529 plan is fundamentally an investment vehicle. Legally, it's a qualified tuition program.
Yeah.
Its value comes from what you could call the three-part federal tax advantage.
Okay, walk us through those three parts.
So first, contributions are made with after-tax dollars. That means there's no federal deduction up front, okay?
Got it. After tax.
Second, and this is where the real magic happens, the investments inside grow entirely tax-deferred. You get that tax-free compounding year after year.
That's huge.
It is. And third, the biggest win. Withdrawals are 100% free from federal income tax if they're used for qualified education expenses, or QHE as they call it. That tax-free growth, that's why this tool is so potent.
All right, let's talk mechanics, specifically about control, because this seems to be where the 529s really shines compared to other ways to save, especially for kids. You have the account owner and the designated beneficiary.
Exactly. And the account owner holds all the power. That's the key strategic advantage here. They pick the investments, they okay the withdrawals, and they keep full control over the assets. The beneficiary, the student, they don't have a legal right to that money.
And that's so critical, isn't it? Because if you use something like a custodial account in UGMA or UTMA, that money automatically goes to the child when they turn 18 or 21, whether they're ready for it or not.
Precisely. With the 529, the owner stays in the driver's seat.
Okay.
And the owner can change the beneficiary to another member of the family without triggering taxes or penalties. And, the IRS definition of family member here is massive. We're talking siblings, parents, first cousins, even in-laws. They're all fair game.
Wow.
It gives you unparalleled flexibility in how you use the funds down the road.
That flexibility, that control, it sounds like it translates directly into estate planning power, too.
It does. Contributions to a 529 are instantly treated as completed gifts. What that means is those assets are immediately removed from the owner's taxable estate, which brings us to this strategy called superfunding. It's a pretty unique provision. A donor can basically accelerate 5 years' worth of the annual gift exclusion limit into a single contribution.
Wait, did you say 5 years? So like $190,000 in one go for a married couple in 2025.
That's right. $95K for an individual, $190K for a couple.
That's like funding a huge chunk of college right there. Or giving a beneficiary a massive head start, tax-free, instantly. What's the catch on gifting at that scale?
Well, the catch is mostly administrative and based on longevity. The donor has to file IRS Form 7 or 9 to elect this 5-year treatment. That's non-negotiable.
Okay.
And if the donor unfortunately passes away within that 5-year period, a prorated chunk of that big contribution gets clawed back into their taxable estate.
Ah, the clawback.
Yeah. So it's strategic, definitely powerful, but you need to survive that 5-year window to get the full estate tax benefit.
So definitely needs careful planning.
Okay, stepping back a bit. When we actually put money into these accounts, our sources mentioned there are 2 fundamentally different ways these plans are set up.
Right. Most people, they use the 529 savings plan. That's the standard model. It works a lot like a 401k, investing in mutual funds or ETFs. Its value goes up and down with the market.
Okay.
But crucially, it covers the full range of qualified education expenses, tuition, yes, but also books, fees, and importantly, room and board.
So the savings plan is kind of the flexible, market-based one. What about the other type? You called it a niche product, the prepaid plan.
Yeah, the 529 prepaid tuition plan. It's designed really as an inflation hedge. You're effectively buying credits for future tuition at today's prices.
Locking in the rate.
Exactly. But the major limitation is that it typically only locks in tuition and mandatory fees. And usually it's restricted to in-state public schools. So if you need money for room, board, or books, the savings plan gives you much broader coverage. Okay, that makes sense. Now, here's where things seem to get really interesting. because the federal government has just dramatically expanded what counts as a qualified education expense, right?
Yeah.
Making the 529 almost like an everything education account.
The expansion has been pretty aggressive, yeah. Take K-12 education. For the last few years, you could pull out up to $10,000 a year, federally tax-free, but only for K-12 tuition.
Right, just tuition. And that rule is getting a major overhaul like right now this summer.
Correct. The timeline here is a bit complex, so pay attention. Effective mid-July 2025, that $10,000 annual cap expands significantly. It will include curriculum, instructional materials, standardized test fees, think AP exams, and importantly, tutoring services.
Wow, okay, so tutoring counts now too.
Under that $10 K cap, starting mid-July, yes.
Yep.
Then starting January 1st, 2026, the annual limit for all these K-12 expenses, tuition, tutoring, materials, the whole lot doubles to $20,000 per beneficiary per year.
That is a massive change. Suddenly, this isn't just a college fund. It's almost like a short-term tax shelter for families already paying for private school or, significant tutoring.
That's exactly how some people are viewing it. And remember, the Secure Act, that brought in changes for vocational training and even debt reduction.
Right, apprenticeships too.
Yeah. Funds can now be used tax-free for fees tied to registered apprenticeships and also credentialing programs.
And what about addressing student debt? Everyone's talking about that. What are the rules there?
So there's a $10,000 lifetime limit per individual. That can be withdrawn tax-free to pay down qualified student loans.
Lifetime limit, okay.
It's per beneficiary, but here's a neat twist. You can also use up to $10,000 of your beneficiary's 529 money to pay down a qualified loan for one of their siblings.
Oh, that's interesting. So you can help out a brother or sister too up to that limit.
Exactly. That flexibility is pretty useful for families.
Plus, you mentioned global use if your beneficiary wants to study abroad.
Yep. The funds can be used at eligible foreign institutions as long as those schools are eligible for U.S. federal student aid programs. So there's global flexibility baked in.
The key is that federal aid eligibility link.
That's the link. Correct.
Okay, let's pivot to the fear factor. Everyone always asks, what happens if I don't use the money for qualified expenses? The big scary thing you hear is the 10% penalty.
Right, and that fear is often, frankly, a bit overblown. We need to break down how a non-qualified withdrawal actually works. It gets split into two parts, principal and earnings.
Principal being the money you put in.
Exactly. The principal portion, your original contributions, is always returned to you completely tax-free and penalty-free, no matter what.
Okay, so the penalty only hits the growth part, the earnings.
Precisely. Only the earnings portion gets hit. And the consequences are, those earnings are subject to ordinary income tax plus that 10% federal additional tax.
So give me an example. If I pull out $10,000 and say half of it is earnings.
Right. So $10,000 withdrawal, $5,000 is earnings. The 10% penalty is only applied to that $5,000 in earnings. So $500, not $1,000 on the whole withdrawal.
Okay, that's much less scary than people think.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned that 10% penalty can sometimes be waived if, say, a student gets a scholarship.
Yes, there are exceptions.
But let's challenge that a bit. If my kid gets a full ride scholarship, fantastic news, right? But I avoid the 10% penalty, okay, but I still have to pay ordinary income tax on maybe 15 years of tax-free growth when I take the money out. That still sounds kind of painful.
It's definitely less painful than also paying the 10% penalty, but yes, you're right, that's the trade-off. The penalty is waived if the beneficiary gets a tax-free scholarship or becomes disabled or attends a U.S. military academy, but the income tax on the earnings, that is not waived. So it softens the blow for achievement or unforeseen circumstances, but it doesn't totally eliminate the tax hit on the growth.
Okay. But the real danger zone, you warned, is often at the state level. You mentioned this thing called recapture. What exactly is that?
Yes, state-level penalties and recapture. That's the true minefield you absolutely need to watch out for. Let's say you live in a state that gave you a nice tax deduction for contributing maybe $5,000 off your state taxable income that year.
Right, a state tax break.
If you later make a withdrawal that the state considers non-qualified, even if the feds are okay with it, that state will demand you pay back the tax savings from that earlier deduction.
Wow, they literally claw back the tax benefit they gave you years ago.
That's exactly what recapture is. And this is a serious financial trap because it often applies even if the withdrawal is perfectly fine under federal rules. Like using the money for K-12 tuition in a state that hasn't updated its laws to match the federal ones.
So the state penalizes you for following federal law? That seems messy.
It is very messy.
Yeah.
And it brings us to probably the single biggest financial decision you face with the 529, which has zero to do with the stock market. Choosing which state's plan to actually use. This choice dictates your real-world tax benefit, or lack thereof.
Because you don't have to use your own state's plan, right?
Not necessarily. Over 30 states offer some kind of tax incentive, usually either a deduction off your income or a tax credit. A credit is generally better, dollar-for-dollar reduction. But the critical difference is whether the state has in-state-only rules or if it offers tax parity.
Okay, explain tax parity. That sounds important.
Very important. If your home state is in-state only, like, say, New York, you must use New York's 529 plan to get any New York state tax benefit, no exceptions.
Okay.
But if your state offers tax parity, like Pennsylvania or Arizona, for example, you get the state tax benefit even if you contribute to a plan run by a totally different state, like Utah or Nevada.
So residents of tax parity states are like free agents. They can shop around nationwide for the best plan based on fees and investments and still get their home state tax break.
Exactly. They are total free agents. They should look for the best quality, lowest cost plan anywhere.
This state divergence is clearly the most critical thing to understand. So let's look at a couple of examples. New York, you mentioned it's in-state only. I hear they offer a pretty good state deduction, though.
They do. It's up to $10,000 for a married couple filing jointly if they contribute to New York's plan. But that deduction comes with some serious handcuffs. New York is a classic example of a nonconformity trap.
How so?
If you take that money you got a deduction for and you roll it over to an out-of-state 529 plan, or if you use it for that federally allowed K-12 tuition we just talked about, New York will recapture your prior tax deductions. They take the benefit back.
Whoa. So they penalize you for moving the money or using it for something the federal government explicitly allows?
Precisely. The state is basically saying, we gave you a tax break for our plan, for our approved uses. Use it differently, even if federally legal, and we want that tax break back. It's sneaky.
Okay, that's a major trap. Then you mentioned the absolute worst-case scenario, California.
California's tough for residents on this. First, they offer zero state tax benefit for contributing to any 529 plan. None.
No deduction, no credit, nothing.
Nothing. Worse, California is actively punitive if you try to use the funds for K-12. California does not conform to the federal K-12 rule. So, if you live in California and use 529 money for K-12 tuition, the earnings portion of that withdrawal is subject to regular California state income tax, plus an additional 2.5% state tax penalty.
Ouch. So they don't give you a break going in, and they slack you with the penalty coming out if you use it for K-12.
Exactly. Which is why California residents are prime examples of those free agents we talked about. They have absolutely no incentive to use California's plan and should absolutely shop around for a high-quality, low-fee plan elsewhere.
Which explains why residents of states with no income tax at all, like Texas, Florida, Nevada, are the ultimate free agents, right?
Absolutely. Since there's no state income tax, there's no state deduction or credit to worry about anyway. Their residents should choose a plan based purely on low fees, good investment options, and plan features. That's why you often see top-rated plans like Utah's My 529 or Nevada's Vanguard 529 plan attracting a lot of assets from non-residents.
Makes total sense. Okay, let's move to the newest, potentially game-changing feature, the Secure 2.0 provision. This started in 2024, letting you roll 529 funds into a Roth IRA. This seems designed to kill that fear of overfunding.
It is a phenomenal feature conceptually. It acts as a safety valve, but, and this is a big but, listeners have to understand, it is not a loophole. It is highly, highly restrictive.
Okay, so what are the key limitations? What makes it hard to actually use?
There are 6 major rules you have to meet. First, there's a $35,000 lifetime maximum rollover limit per beneficiary. That's it, over their entire life.
35 grand max, lifetime, got it.
Second, the amount you can roll over in any single year is capped by the annual Roth IRA contribution limit. That's $7,000 in 2025. That $7,000 limit is reduced, dollar for dollar, by any regular Roth or traditional IRA contributions the beneficiary makes that year.
Okay, so if the beneficiary already put $3,000 into their Roth that year, they can only roll over $4,000 from the 529.
Exactly. It prevents doubling up beyond the annual limit.
Okay, that seems fair to limit abuse, but then we hit the big timing hurdles, right?
Yes, the timing rules are significant. The big one is the 15-year rule. The 529 account must have been open for that specific beneficiary for at least 15 years before any rollover can happen.
15 years.
15 years. And there's a fourth rule layered on top. Any contributions made within the last 5 years and the earnings on those recent contributions are ineligible to be rolled over.
Wow. Okay. 15 years and a 5-year look back or seasoning rule. This really is designed for money that was saved, like for a newborn, not money you socked away when the kid was already in high school.
Precisely. It's an anti-abuse measure. It ensures the account was genuinely intended for education over the long term. Fifth rule. The beneficiary must have taxable earned income like from a job that's at least equal to the amount being rolled over in that specific year.
Earned income requirement. Okay.
And finally, rule number 6. It has to be a direct trustee-to-trustee transfer from the 529 plan administrator to the Roth IRA custodian. You can't just take the money out and put it in yourself.
Okay, lots of hoops to jump through. But even with all those restrictions, if you meet them, getting leftover 529 money into a Roth tax-free seems like a massive win if your state plays along.
That is the ultimate flashing warning sign here. While this 529 Roth rollover is completely tax-free at the federal level, several states, California is the poster child again, do not conform to this federal rule.
So what happens in a non-conforming state like California?
They will treat that federally tax-free rollover as a non-qualified withdrawal from the 529 plan. That means they'll hit the earnings portion with state income tax and, in California's case, that extra 2.5% state penalty.
Unbelievable. So you follow all 6 federal rules perfectly, do the rollover, and your state still taxes and penalizes you.
If your state hasn't conformed, yes, that's the risk. You absolutely must check both federal and state rules for your specific situation before you even think about initiating one of these rollovers.
So wrapping this all up, what's the big picture takeaway? The 529 is clearly now an incredibly powerful, flexible tool thanks to these expanding federal benefits, right? Covering K-12, loans, maybe even retirement now.
Yes, the federal benefits have made it incredibly versatile.
Okay.
But its complexity, and frankly, its biggest risks, lie entirely in that state-by-state variation. You just cannot assume your state follows the federal lead. You have to verify the tax impact of any action, putting money in, taking money out, rolling it over at both levels, federal and state.
But for someone who does their homework, maybe someone in a state with no income tax or one of those tax parity states.
With that proactive planner, yes, the 529 is arguably one of the most flexible and powerful education funding and even wealth transfer tools available today.
Okay. And on that note of complexity and needing to do your homework, what's the one lingering ambiguity, the thing we should leave listeners thinking about that still complicates advanced planning here?
The biggest unresolved planning risk, I think, revolves around that Roth rollover provision, specifically the 15-year clock. We know the account has to be open for 15 years for the beneficiary to be eligible for the rollover.
Right, 15-year rule.
But the IRS is given absolutely no formal guidance on whether changing the beneficiary, which is a very common planning strategy, maybe moving funds from an older child who didn't need it all to a younger sibling, whether that change resets the 15-year clock for the new, younger beneficiary.
Does the clock restart when you change the name on the account?
Exactly. And until we get clear guidance from the IRS on that specific point, conservative financial planners basically have to assume the clock does reset. And that assumption severely limits the actual flexibility of using beneficiary changes as part of a long-term strategy to eventually get money into a Roth IRA for multiple kids. This regulatory ambiguity creates a pretty substantial hurdle for maximizing what could be a really great feature.
So even the safety valve has trapdoors. More complexity to navigate. Thanks for breaking that all down.
Happy to do it. It's a powerful tool, but you